Today, we want to share a heartbreaking yet inspiring story about Reuben, a lion who was rescued from a painful life of solitary confinement at the Armenian Zoo. Thanks to the dedicated efforts of Animal Defenders International, ADI, a nonprofit organization focused on rescuing wild animals, Reuben was moved to a wildlife sanctuary in South Africa. As highlighted in one of ADI's Instagram posts, Reuben was left behind when a private zoo closed, and the other animals were relocated. He has not heard another lion's roar for 6 years. To learn more about Reuben's journey, we spoke with Tim Phillips, the vice president of ADI. While we were familiar with the circumstances of Reuben's prolonged isolation, we were eager to understand how ADI became aware of his situation and decided to intervene. Tim explained, "A friend informed us about a lion living alone in an abandoned zoo in Armenia. The owner of the zoo had passed away, the zoo closed, and all the other animals were relocated. But this one lion was left behind. The story struck us deeply. It felt heartless to remove all the other animals and leave one behind. Isolation from their species is incredibly harmful to captive animals, but Reuben's case was even worse because he had once lived with other animals and then suddenly found himself in complete silence. We immediately began investigating his situation and looked for a place where he could be kept safely while making arrangements to bring him out of Armenia and to the ADI Wildlife Sanctuary." One of the most moving aspects of Reuben's story is the impact his confinement had on his ability to vocalize, especially his inability to roar. We asked ADI's co-founder how Reuben had adapted to his new environment at the wildlife sanctuary and whether any positive changes had occurred. Tim shared, "What amazed everyone was how quickly Reuben embraced his new life. His entire demeanor shifted the moment he stepped out of his transport crate. We had anticipated that he might stumble out, disoriented and confused, but instead, he confidently walked out, wobbled a bit, and headed straight for a large catnip punch bag, beginning to play with it. He was completely engaged with his surroundings, exploring, playing, and observing everything around him." Organizing a flight for Reuben from Armenia was no easy task. ADI needed an aircraft with large enough cargo doors to accommodate his travel crate. "There's something incredibly special about returning animals to their natural habitats, the world nature intended for them," Phillips remarked. Seeing him place his first paw on African soil after spending his life on concrete on the other side of the world was magical. He seemed to truly enjoy the warmth of the sun on his back and the wind blowing through his mane. Thanks to Qatar Airways' We Care charity program, a wide-bodied aircraft was arranged for Reuben's flight and space was donated for his journey. On August 22nd, Reuben began the trip of a lifetime. Reuben's health has improved significantly since his rescue. ADI's veterinarian recently checked on him and was impressed with his progress. The vet noted that Reuben's interactions with his toys were helping him improve his movement and balance, and his arched spine was showing signs of improvement. It's a combination of the care he's receiving and Reuben's own determination, the veterinarian explained. Once all the preparations were in place, the ADI team in Armenia was ready to send Reuben on his journey. He traveled in a specially designed transport crate, placed in the temperature-controlled, pressurized cargo hold of the plane. When we asked him about any heartwarming moments from Reuben's arrival at the sanctuary, he recalled the moment Reuben stepped out of his crate. The most touching moment was when he emerged from the crate, wobbled a bit to steady himself, and then went straight to the catnip bag, beginning to play with it. That was his very first toy. Over the course of the day, he tore it apart and then lay down, with his mane full of catnip. He seemed to find comfort in that toy and kept returning to it, even sleeping with it. On some days, he carries his toys around and places them in his sleeping areas. We were also curious about how the other animals at the sanctuary reacted to their new neighbor. Tim said, "The other animals immediately took notice of Reuben's arrival. Simba and Ray, 2 lions we rescued from a circus in Peru, came over and lay down, watching Reuben. There was no aggression or territorial behavior. They were simply curious about their new neighbor. Max and Stripes, the 2 tigers on the other side of Reuben, also approached to see who had arrived. Reuben observed all of them with equal interest. Reuben's 14-hour journey, which included a layover in Doha, was one of the most significant milestones in his life. One of the most painful aspects of his long period of isolation was the fact that Reuben had stopped roaring. However, now surrounded by other wild cats, he is slowly rediscovering his voice and learning to communicate with the other residents of the sanctuary. Lions can take days or even weeks to begin roaring when they arrive at a new territory, as they are unsure of who is around and cautious about announcing their presence. Reuben let out a little roar on his first morning, and it's gradually getting louder, Tim explained. Tim also shared how the sanctuary staff worked hard to prepare Reuben for his arrival. The ADI Wildlife Sanctuary team adores him, and he responded to them immediately. In Armenia, they struggled to administer the internal parasite treatments he needed for travel. He simply refused to take them. Before he arrived, we assigned a team to be his special caregivers, working to build his trust. However, on his first evening at ADIWS, he came when called and took his medication from food held by tongs. He clearly sensed a change in his surroundings. For the first time in 6 years, Reuben came face to face with Easy, a lioness at the sanctuary. Reuben's arrival in August meant that he was not only transitioning from one country to another, but also from one season to another. He arrived when it was blistering hot summer in Armenia and the end of winter in South Africa. When he was loaded in Armenia, we filled his water tray with ice, and in Qatar, he was transported between aircrafts by an air-conditioned truck. Used to the cold winters of Armenia, he had to adjust from summer there to winter in South Africa. Initially, we brought him into his heated house at night and let him outside in the morning. After about a week, as the temperatures began to rise, Reuben seemed to sense that spring was coming. One evening, he decided to stay outside overnight like the other lions. It was incredibly special to see him sitting there, with an African sunset behind him. Reuben's story has deeply moved people around the world. We spoke with Tim Phillips about how individuals and communities can support ADI's work in rescuing and caring for animals like Reuben. We need people to help ADI care for Reuben and other animals like him. Reuben is 15 years old and could live for another 8 or 10 years. He will need continuous care during that time, including significant veterinary attention. We also have over 30 other lions and tigers, rescued from similar circumstances. You can help by adopting Reuben or one of our other lions and tigers with a small monthly contribution. Tim concluded with a call to action. Please don't forget about the animals who are still suffering like Reuben did, those in tiny circus cages or isolated in small, concrete zoo enclosures. Thanks to ADI, 50 countries around the world have banned the use of wild animals in circuses. Join our campaigns to empty more cages. A donation to ADI is the best way to support the animals we've rescued and to help us save more.